You are watching this video because you have recently seen the movie Toy Story 4 and you're confused by the timeline. Now granted, I was in 9th grade when the first one came out in November of '95. I saw it in the theater, and so now I saw this Toy Story 4 with both of my kids. So obviously big deal. I totally overanalyze the movie as someone who's been alive through all 4 movies and seen the first one as all the way to the 4th one, both of those in the theater. But the timeline is confusing because you want to think, oh yeah, it follows Andy's life, however many years there were between sequels, that's how many years he aged in real life. But that's not true. If that were true, by the way, that would make Andy 30 years old in 2019 because he was born in 1989. Now let me get out my cheat sheet based on the internet research I've done. Here's what we're looking at. The first Toy Story, as I mentioned, came out in 1995. November of '95, I saw it in the theater. I was a freshman in high school. I saw it when it first came out. That was 1995. He turns 6 in Toy Story 1, which again, 1995. He turns 6 years old, which by default means he's born in 1989. So that's easy to follow. We're good on that. If that were our baseline and everything worked out, after that is easily, you wouldn't be watching this video. Here's where it gets tricky already for the sequel. The sequel takes place, or the sequel was released in 1999, the year I graduated high school. 4 years later, so imagine that. First one comes out when I'm a freshman. The second one comes out when I am a senior that year, 99. Here's where it gets interesting though. The second movie takes place around 2 years later because of his sister and what age that she was able to walk and talk and that sort of thing. It looks like it takes place 2 years later. So instead of being 4 years later in 1999, which is how many years there are between the sequels, it's actually just 2 years. So that would mean by default, Toy Story 2 takes place in 1997, though it was released in 1999. And apparently, from what we learn in Toy Story 4, apparently right after the events of Toy Story 2, that is when Bo Peep is given away. So 1997, in according to the storyline, is when she was given away. We might come back to that in a minute. Now to Toy Story 3. Toy Story 3, Andy's 18 years old, or we could say he's 17 years old, but based on his birthday arguably being in November, that means he would already be 18 in Toy Story 3 as he's getting ready to move to college. And that movie would have to take place in 2007 for the timeline to work out if you were 18, because he was born in 1989. So Toy Story 3 was released in 2010. Andy was 18 based on the fact he was born in 1989. So if he's 18 in 2010, that means the movie actually takes place in 2017. Now if you followed all of that, now let's talk about Toy Story 4. In Toy Story 4, based on real terms, I already said Andy was born in 1989. This is 2019. He'd be 30 years old. Imagine how interesting that'd be. If it were about easily about his own kids at this point, that could have been a storyline. But we've already established since the second movie, we're not following necessarily real time. But in real time, he'd be 30 years old. It's not about Andy, as we know. It's about Bonnie. And here's what's interesting. When you consider Toy Story 3 came out in 2010, 9 years ago. In theory, Bonnie, who was 4 years old when Toy Story 3 came out, when the toys were given to her, well, if you do the math on that, 9 years after 4, she'd be like 15 years old. But which is how old I was basically when the first Toy Story came out. So, but they don't do that. Instead, Toy Story 4 picks up exactly where Toy Story 3 left off. Now, as we know, Toy Story 4 is her getting ready to go into kindergarten. Typically, you're 5 years old when you start kindergarten. My wife was 4 because of when her birthday is in the year, but typically most children are 5 when they go into kindergarten. But Toy Story 3, she's still in preschool. We assume it's the same year. That's not a problem. That could have happened in the spring that she got the toys. Same year, a couple months later, now she's getting ready for preschool, which is Toy Story 4. Same year. She's now 5, but it's the same actual calendar year. Bonnie, 5 years old in 2017, because again, Toy Story 3 takes place in 2007. That's what I meant. So Toy Story 4 in 2007. Toy Story 3 in 2007. Bonnie's 4 in Toy Story 3 in 2007. And she's 5 also in 2007 because her birthday took place that year. Though in real time, Andy would be 30. Now, here's the whole point of all of this. This timeline works for the convenience of the storytelling, not by any kind of chronological means. But that's very obvious since the very first sequel, Toy Story 2, which is in 1989. So does that clear it all up? I mean, this is based on me researching several articles on the internet, because I'm not the only one who feels this way about it. But ultimately, the hard facts are this. The first Toy Story was released and takes place in 1995. Andy turned 6. He was born in 89. And based on that, he'd be 30 years old. But the sequels did not follow the same number of years, even though that could have been interesting. But that's not what they wanted to do with this storyline. And once they broke the rules on that in Toy Story 2 and wanted to make the years however they wanted to see fit, then that's how they did it. It helps that this is animation, so we're not dealing with real actors, child actors who are growing up. And that's a liberty they have because it is animation. Your thoughts, where do they belong? They belong right here. Tell me all about it.